Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Today we're diving into the recent breakdown by John Mearsheimer of the Trump-Putin summit. It's a meaty topic with lots of geopolitical layers to unpack.
Absolutely, it's a fascinating intersection of strategy and international relations. What stood out for you the most in the discussion?
One of the key elements is how Mearsheimer interprets Trump's approach to engaging with Putin. He argues that the summit wasn't just a political spectacle, it signifies a deeper, perhaps even strategic realignment in international power dynamics.
That's interesting. It sounds like he's suggesting there's more behind the curtain than we might see on the surface. Could you expand on that?
Sure, so Mearsheimer, coming from his realist perspective, points out that Trump's actions appeared to lean into acknowledging, or at least softening, the stance towards Russia. Essentially, he hints that there might be some calculated move, either intentionally or inadvertently, that shifts expectations about Western support, particularly concerning Ukraine.
Yep, right, and the timing of this conversation is crucial. With the Ukraine war dragging on, any summits between leaders like Trump and Putin naturally spark debate.
Exactly, it's like every word and every gesture seems loaded with implications. Mearsheimer's analysis, as presented in the Breaking Points video, delves into how Trump's actions may have recalibrated allies and adversaries alike.
And considering the view count, over 125,000 views in just a few hours, it's clear that a lot of people are hungry for a nuanced take on these events.
Definitely. Mearsheimer is no stranger to nuanced takes. His background in geopolitical theory gives him a certain authority. He lays out that we're watching a redefinition of power structures. His interpretation challenges the more simplistic narratives we've seen.
You know, I've heard some critics argue that his perspective might be too rooted in old-school realism, perhaps neglecting new forms of hybrid warfare or digital influence. What do you think?
That's a fair point. It's like, he meticulously explains traditional statecraft while maybe not giving as much weight to the modern, internet-driven dynamics. Yet his framework still forces us to consider the long game of international strategy, doesn't it?
It sure does. And looking at the broader context, what do you make of the merchandise and branding associated with the Breaking Points channel? Do you think that plays a role in shaping the debate?
That's an intriguing aspect. The Breaking Points channel, with its unique mix of analysis and accessible presentation, complete with merch like the ugly sweatshirt and travel mugs, sort of mirrors the broader trend of blending academic insight with popular media appeal. It makes these heavy topics more digestible for a wider audience.
Yeah, exactly. So, in a way, the medium amplifies the message. The channel not only informs but also monetizes the conversation, adding another layer to how political discourse is consumed.
Exactly. It's a convergence of entertainment and deep analysis. And with even live chats and transcripts available, there's a document of public engagement in real time. It gives viewers an opportunity to follow along and critically question the interpretations being offered.
Speaking of questioning interpretations, how does Mearsheimer address the actual outcomes of the summit in terms of its implications for Ukraine?
He suggests that the summit might have an implicit message about the West's strategy regarding Ukraine. Essentially, the summit could indicate a de-escalated posture or even a signal that the United States and its allies are reconsidering their measures.
Yeah, that's right. That definitely spins the narrative. But don't you think this perspective might underestimate the risk of misinterpretation by adversarial powers?
I see your point, and yes, there is a delicate balance there. Mearsheimer's analysis, while robust, does rely on the assumption that both sides operate within a predictable realm of strategic logic. But in reality, miscommunication, mixed signals, and deliberate provocation can all throw a wrench in that system.
Right, yeah. It reminds me of that old adage that perception is reality in international relations. The way actions are interpreted could well be as significant as the actions themselves.
Absolutely. And what's compelling is how Mearsheimer lays out the historical context for this, pointing to prior interactions and established patterns. It's like drawing a line from past diplomatic engagements straight to this summit, which, in his view, isn't an isolated incident, but part of a broader continuum.
Yeah, he really does provide a historical narrative that makes you think about these events, not as random, but as iterative moves in a long chess game.
Exactly. It's like every summit, every handshake, every maybe ambiguous smile at the negotiating table gets imbued with meaning. Mearsheimer points out that this kind of strategic ambiguity has always been a tool in a state's arsenal.
And yet, while his lens is very structured, I sometimes wonder if it fully captures the chaos of modern politics. You know, the spontaneous media cycles, the viral tweets, and other less formal exercises of influence.
That's a fair challenge. His analysis might seem a bit structural and perhaps not as agile in addressing these less tangible modern factors. However, I think that's where his strength lies, focusing on the core fundamentals of power.
Yeah, that's true. It's like balancing on a tightrope between grand theory and on the ground unpredictability.
Exactly. And it almost reminds me of a chess match where every piece's move is calculated, but sometimes a piece unexpectedly falls due to unforeseen circumstances. Mearsheimer's analysis gives us the board layout, but the actual game is still in motion.
Right. So, if we tie this back to the Ukraine conflict, how should policymakers, do you think, read between these lines?
Well, from Mearsheimer's breakdown, there's an implication that policy should not be viewed in isolation. It's a reminder that strategic decisions, even from surprising summits like this, are part of a larger, unpredictable narrative. Policymakers, therefore, ought to be cautious, basing their moves on both historical precedent and the evolving real-time signals emanating from such high-stake
Yeah, absolutely.
negotiations.
That's a lot to chew on. And it's fascinating how a single event gets reinterpreted through so many academic and media lenses.
Yes, it really is, like a prism splitting light into its constituent colors. Mearsheimer's take is one perspective among many, yet it encourages us to consider the underlying power dynamics.
Indeed. And with platforms like YouTube and live podcast streams, this conversation reaches a wider audience beyond academic circles.
Exactly. That's one of the dynamic aspects of modern media, how deep theoretical insights are now part of mainstream discussion. It's a bit like having a front row seat to the ongoing redefinition of global politics.
Right, yeah. It certainly makes you wonder what the next move in this global strategy game will be.
Absolutely, and it keeps the conversation open. Whether you're a student of international relations or just a curious observer, breaking down these summits allows us to grasp the complexity behind seemingly routine diplomatic meetings.
True that. You mentioned earlier a bit about the interplay between traditional realism and modern uncertainties. Do you see potential for any synthesis of these views?
That's an insightful question. I think there's certainly room to synthesize both approaches. It's like keeping the solid bedrock of traditional realism while flexibly incorporating the chaotic elements of digital diplomacy, cyber influence, and even viral media moments. In other words, blending structure with spontaneity could, in theory, provide a more holistic understanding.
True. It does sound promising, although sometimes I'd respectfully argue that merging these frameworks can dilute the clarity of each. There's always a trade-off between depth and breadth.
That's a fair critique. There's a risk that in trying to account for everything, the core insights might get a bit muddled. However, I think the evolving discourse, as evidenced by discussions like Mearsheimer's breakdown, shows that the academic community is step by step moving towards this synthesis.
Yeah, exactly. It sure will be interesting to watch these ideas evolve over the next few years, especially as more summits and unexpected diplomatic turns occur.
Indeed. And it's that very evolution that keeps both the academic and public debates vibrant. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube, catching a podcast episode, or reading a transcript, events like the Trump-Putin summit offer endless material for debate and reflection.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for the deep dive today. It's been quite enlightening.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone listening. Stay curious and keep thinking about the many layers behind every headline.